Spurs, not the day for them, especially given Leicester's record so far this season, especially in those recent games as well. When you take a look at the bottom end of the table, Tottenham Hotspur stay 15th, but that latest loss has to deepen that sense of trouble that they're in. As for Leicester, they climb out of the relegation zone and sit 17th right now. Obviously didn't help that James Maddison was out today due to soreness with all the absences they already have, but when you look at Tottenham's recent results, it does not make for good reading right now. As mentioned, a winless run extended to 7 today, and 6 of those games have been losses, one of them a draw. That's how things are looking. As for Leicester City, they snapped their 7-game Premier League losing streak up against Spurs, and more to the point, Spurs were at home as well. Julien Laurens joining us now. Jules, let me start with you. Is this a new low for Spurs?
Yeah, without doubt. I think the start of that second half just sums up really completely what this team is about right now and how asleep they were at the start of that second half. I don't know what Postecoglou said at halftime. I don't know what those players did during that break, but to start like this at home against a team that is so bad as Leicester has been for the last 6 weeks or so is unacceptable, really. And I think there's a time where Ange Postecoglou has to stop bringing up injuries every single time, because today his starting lineup is better than the Leicester starting lineup. They didn't lose because they have all those injuries. They lose because they were not good enough in that second half, because they fell asleep, because you look at the defending on the 2 goals and it's atrocious. It is structurally, defensively atrocious from Spurs' point of view and from Postecoglou himself, because he clearly doesn't coach them to defend properly. I don't care. You've got Gray and you've got Spence and you've got Davis. This is what you are. And look at how you defend. You can still defend well with bad players or with reserve players or young players or players who don't play much or players who come back from injury. But the way he has them to defend so far this season, not just since the injury, but even before that, they were bad when they had all their players available. Against Ipswich at home, they were terrible, and they had all their back 5, goalkeeper and the back 4. So I'm not buying all these excuses now about injuries and it's going to get better. They were a better team today on the pitch than Leicester, and they were shockingly bad.
Stevie, they have dropped 21 points from winning positions this season, which is a league high.
Yeah. Half of me feels bad for Tottenham, but the other half of me is questioning a lot of things that are going on at Tottenham. And I feel bad because, yes, they've got injuries, and yes, I agree that the team they had on the field absolutely should be beating Leicester City, but they've got no legs in them. I mean, in the first half, they were the better side, but they didn't have the legs. And the part that annoys me most is that you come in at half-time 1-0 up, you haven't played well, but you're in control against a Leicester team who quite honestly are awful. I mean, the fact that they scored 2 goals, I'm shocked, because they never looked as though they had a clue what they were going to try and do anyway. For Tottenham to come out, and it smelt like they were sitting in the dressing room thinking, Leicester are really bad. All we need to do is go out in this second half and we'll win the game. That was the smell I got from this second half performance.
I got a different smell from the second half performance.
And half of that is down to the players and the other half's down to Ange and his coaching staff. Because you, as a coach, have to be able to smell that stuff. You have to have a look around and see, who's geeing everybody up, who's making sure that we start this second half correctly. And you have to smell it and you have to see it in the players. And if you don't, you're not doing your job. So they got exactly what they deserved for the second half performance. And as I said, Leicester, my goodness, they may be out the top 3, but I would put money on they're going to end up back in that bottom 3, no danger.
Let's live in a fantasy world in which Spurs are top of the table right now, right?
That's quite the fantasy.
It is a fantasy world, but let's assume that that's indeed the case. Even if they were top of the table right now, and even if they had been flying, if you go into halftime winning 1-0, and 3 minutes into the second half, you're now losing 2-1, there would have been criticism and questions. Of course there would have been of Ange Postecoglou. What did this guy say? What did he say to the team? Now, that's if you were top of the table. But given their struggles, given what they have been so far this season, given that this has been continued and sustained for month over month, then the criticism multiplies exponentially. The pressure and the anxiety multiplies exponentially. And you could feel it in the stadium. You could sense it, that it's almost as if the fans know that something bad is about to happen and we're here again for it, and we have no answers, and the players out there have no answers, and the manager down there have no answers. And so it all feels like there's just this awful black cloud hanging over Spurs, and they're all looking at each other and saying, what do we do now? And in that question of what do we do now, then there is, to Jules' point, there is this sort of very convenient, which is the truth, but it's a convenient, very quick explanation. You know, we're missing players. Yes, you may be missing players, but you're winning the game. So you had been good enough to be winning the game, and to your point, Stevie, against a terrible team. A terrible team. A team, they had questions. And major questions coming into this match. They had lost 7 in a row. And somehow, those guys seem to have more answers than the team at home coming out of halftime. That is scary bad from Spurs' perspective.
How much longer do you think Ange has, Jules?
I mean, we repeat the same thing on the show all the time. Steve and I were on the other day after the last defeat from Spurs, and we said what's keeping him in the job right now is the cup, because they're still factually, they can still win 3 different trophies. They're still in the Europa League, and they look good to qualify directly for the next round without going through the playoffs. There's that second leg semi-final of the League Cup, obviously away at Liverpool, and they've got that 1-0 lead from the first leg. It might not be enough, but they're still in it until they play that game. And then there's the FA Cup, where they will have to play against Aston Villa. And for now, this is very much what's keeping him in his job. The pressure is mounting for sure. I've said before that dressing room is at times struggling with a lot of things that Ange does, but they still, I believe, behind him for now. They understand the issue with injuries. And I think what they understand the most, and what I think we need to address as well, is the lack of reinforcement from Spurs as a club to Ange Postecoglou and to this squad, because how we are on January the 26th, this transfer window has been open for 26 days, and yet the only player that has arrived is a goalkeeper, albeit not a very good one from what we've seen so far, as we saw again today on that first goal. Where are the new signings? Where are the reinforcements? Don't tell me that they can't find 1, 2, maybe even 3 players. I know January is a difficult transfer window, but they are crying for new players, for fresh legs, for a bit of competition within that squad, for places, all of that. The money is there. Why are they not spending it? And on that point, I feel for Postecoglou, really, because he should be backed up more by this team and by Daniel Levy. By the way, Daniel Levy, who is paying himself more than 90% of the squad that he's actually playing, which this is a stat that is baffling me. The way structure at Tottenham right now doesn't allow them to compete with the top teams in England, because they're not paying their players like top clubs are in England, for example, when they could. So that lack of reinforcement and that strange wage bill that they have, structure, I think is a problem for them right now. But he's still in place, because we will have to wait what happens in the 3 cups that they're still engaged in.
We haven't been at any press conferences that Ange has had. And for him to start this press conference with, we could do incredible things in the last part of the season. Is he courageous or is he delusional? Which one is it?
It's a great question, Steve. I think it's a bit of both. Remember really early on in the season where he was already under pressure. He said, I always win in my second season. Wow. Like, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. And trust me, by the end of this season, I would have brought a trophy here at Tottenham. So I guess we will have to see. And until they are still technically in competitions, he's right. They can finish the season amazingly well and win the treble, for example. Okay, a cup treble, but still a treble. Mm-hmm. But you're right. He's as brave as it sounds. He's also looking like he's in denial himself about what this team right now, who can't beat Leicester, who can't beat Ipswich, who struggles against pretty much every team in this league, can actually achieve together. And that's the thing. And he also said today in another interview that he did, there's nothing else I can ask of those players. This is not true. You can ask them to defend better. You can set them up in a way that they defend better. Your halftime team talk could be better, so they don't start the second half like a pub team, like they did today. So even what he says in the communication, and to be fair, that has been picked up by some of the players anyway, that I think his communication lately has been terrible.
I just remembered there. They couldn't beat Tamworth. They couldn't beat Tamworth. They had to go to extra time. A team that's 6 leagues below them.
Don't ask me.
And he's talking about.
I have a hard time knowing where Tamworth is.
He's talking about having an incredible season. No, you answer me question, Jules. He is delusional.
So answer my question, Stevie. With Ange and with the fact that there are these cups still available to him, as Jules just laid out, is that why he's still in the role? And is it right for him to still be in the role because this is what's ahead?
Well, I don't think there's an obvious candidate if you're going to get rid of him. So if that's the case, then there's not really any point in getting rid of him. I think you're just going to upset the apple cart even more. Whilst there's a sliver of possibility, and I mean a sliver, then I guess you keep him there. But again, a large part of that is because there really isn't a real successor, somebody you could go to. So for now, just keep delivering the nonsense that is.
We're talking about the cup competitions, and Ange Postecoglou is talking about the cup competitions as if these things are going to be positive. You still got to go win the games.
Yeah.
You still got to advance in these cup competitions in order for them to be this positive experience that is going to somehow make this season significant for them. I would ask anybody for that matter, what is more likely as we watch this team play, for them to win these cup competitions or for them to be potentially in a relegation fight? And that, if you think about it, what's more likely, given what we see from this team, what's more likely? Are they going to advance past Liverpool in the semifinals? Well, I think eventually Liverpool are going to come back and they're going to win that. And so, but is it likely that Spurs lose next week? And now all of a sudden, if there are teams behind them that start winning, then you think, now you're having a different type of conversation. Again, we're assuming that in the competitions they're going to advance and that's going to make it okay. Well, what about the league? Because they keep losing.
The problem, fortunately for them, in terms of the league, you got Southampton, Ipswich,
terrible.
Leicester,
terrible.
And Wolves.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So I don't see them getting relegated, but I don't see them winning a tournament.
When it comes to possible candidates, Jules, are there any names that have been floated about?
Not really, but I think we should all remember when Jose Moreno was sacked a few days before playing a League Cup final with Spurs, and I think Ryan Mason took over and was the interim coach. Really, but at the time, again, it was very toxic within that dressing room, around the team, around the players. It's not toxic in that same sense now because the players like Ange and he's a very likable guy. Everybody at the club likes him. And I think there's a lot of people who also recognize the injury issue. Of course, we do. We're not stupid. We understand that it's better if you can play with your strongest 11 than if you play with a bunch of kids and nobody on the bench, etc. Of course we are. But there's also people within the club who acknowledge, let's put it that way, that there's still a lot of things that this team is not doing right. Even with all these injuries, there's still quality in some positions, as we saw today. There's still good players, and yet not much changed. We talked a lot on the show about plan A and the absence of a plan B for Ange, because it's just one way of playing, and that's the only way. Whoever is there, whoever is available, not available, it doesn't matter. He plays the whole time the same way, which that I think in itself is something that he needs to address as a coach. We understand having a philosophy, a style of football. We mention it a lot, but there's having a style and not being really realistic about what your team can achieve, and sometimes just a little tweak can make a big difference. And that he's never wanted to do that. So I don't think there is right now a main candidate or somebody who's really outstanding available for it. I think, there was Graham Potter before, who was always linked with whoever was under pressure in the Premier League, but even he has gone to another club in West Ham. So, and I don't think the club right now sees sacking Ange as the right solution and the right option. I think they will probably assess the whole situation at the end of the season. But it's true that the pressure is getting so big, and it's more that he's just not finding a way. And I think, as Stevie often says on the show, as a coach, you need to find answers, solutions, find ways of getting your team out of a bad patch, or if there's a player missing, you adapt for your team to still be